Hi, everyone.
Hey, Chris. I think we're just
Howdy.
waiting for
sorry.
the,
I'm getting there.
we're just waiting for the recording to kick in and we'll start.
Oops. Fine.
Andrea, are we clear to start?
She's muted. Well, it's showing us recording and live.
All right, well, I gotta believe I could start over again if we're not. So we're gonna call ourselves to order
Yeah,
for the City of
you are
Westminster.
good to go. Sorry.
All right, we're here with the City of Westminster Historic District Commission. Tonight is Wednesday, May 11th at 7 p.m. We have a virtual meeting on Zoom where we're meeting for our monthly meeting with our commissioners. I'll call us to order with our statement of authority. The Westminster Historic District Commission derives its authority from Chapter 164, Article 9A of the City Code, which is authorized by the Maryland Code Annotated Land Use Article Division 1, Single Jurisdiction Planning and Zoning, Title 8 of Historic Preservation. The qualifications of the Westminster Historic District Commission are on file at the City Administration Building at 45 West Main Street, and the file is open to the public. Can we take a quick head count of who's here? Chris McMasters.
Josh Ambrose.
Kevin Wagman.
Chris Amadori.
So we have we do have a quorum. I kept wanting to say a majority, a quorum. All right, so we're ready to go. So has anyone managed to look at the approval for the meeting summary of April 6th? Kevin did. Anyone else want to second that for approval?
I'm happy to second, but I'll note that I wasn't there, so maybe I should abstain. I can't really weigh in on this one too much.
How about you, Chris? Did you get a chance to look it over?
I glanced at it and it looks fine. So
Good to be us. All right, so we'll take that as a acceptance, and if we have something later that we need to review in those minutes, we can. Sound good? All right, let's move on to old business. Item A, contents for the historic structures report. I sent around a draft for people to take a quick look at.
And this is in the, yeah, we're looking at it on the screen as well, correct?
Yes.
Sorry, I had an incoming phone that bleeped you guys out. Could you repeat that, Mark?
I just asked if we were looking at it on screen and Mark confirmed.
Good, okay. All right, so according to our agenda, we're sort of starting with the bottom part, the update to the required documentation for all structures for consideration. Basically, I'm asking the submission to, at least have a minimum of contents, that is title pages and subsequent page numbers, so that when we get these historic reports, we can all be on page as to what we're commenting on. An intro about the request for the demo permit. I suggest a historic rubric that maybe people would want to stay within, and I named the time periods. And last meeting, I talked a little bit why I broke those time periods down. The text must combine the information from all kinds of historic sources so that we're not the ones shoveling through the car state inventories versus the National Register versus information gathered from secondary sources like historic books or the building of Westminster. You know, it should all be combined into a single narrative with references. And so I speak a little bit under number 5, that text should be supported with photographs. And I talk specifically on how I think photographs ought to be presented in a historic structures report. I move on to number 6 about the photos. Again, the photos should be crisp and clear. And there should be a log of them, and they should say a direction. They should have a point to them, to be honest. I mean, just firing off a mess of photos isn't helpful if you don't see the same thing the photographer sees. The conclusion should include a request for sections of the entire building or sections of the entire building to be removed. There should be a list of actions to help lessen the damage. And those actions can be the fact that you stayed within the original footprint or that you kept it at the same size as of the original structure. There's a lot of lessening damage that can be done and can be negotiated, and that should be recorded in this historic structures report. Lastly, there should be a bibliography of all the sources consulted, all the libraries looked at or referenced, so that we can look at it with a quick glance and know if there's any glaring errors, like the Sanborn maps weren't consulted or something. And then lastly, we really need paper copies, because I think when you get just digital copies, they tend to be the kitchen sink thrown in there. Whereas if you're having to really think about it like an 8th grade paper, hopefully you'll put it together with thought and preciseness rather than just throwing things into a huge digital document. Did anyone have any questions about those?
I think it's a pretty good list. You know, I think until we walk through it, I won't, you know, we'll see what needs to be tweaked. And hopefully we don't have to walk through it for a while. But you know, again, full kudos to you for pulling it together. I have a more of a meta question, and this is really directed toward Mark and anyone else on city staff. Maybe it's for the whole group, and that is just simply, what are the ramifications of someone who doesn't fulfill this and doesn't meet our requirements, and you know, we don't approve the demolition? I think I have just a question about that in my mind, of what is the city's role and what is the city's response in that scenario.
That's a good question, Mark.
Okay, let me get to that section. Okay, John, and we touched a little bit about on this last time. So, because the one question was, what is the authority of the HDC to request these elements? There is in the code already. Let's see, let me get to this. So there is something already in the code today. It's under the let me get to it. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to scroll through chapter 56 buildings, article 1, section 56-5, demolitions within the historic district. And if you go to C,
Can you share that, Mark?
um,
Can you share your screen or?
I can't. Andrew's under control.
Oh,
But the statement says that the applicant, this is somebody that's submitting for a demolition permit, if it gets to the point that it's deemed to be reviewable by the Historic District Commission, that the applicant shall provide the Historic District Commission with archiving information as to the property under guidelines established by it, similar to those adopted by the Maryland Historic Trust. So it's a shall statement. So anybody doing demolition, they shall provide this archiving information. And I think what Chris is wisely doing is outlining what are those guidelines being established by the HDC that are similar to those adopted by the Maryland Historic Trust. So I think is outlining what is expected of an applicant. So then the next question is, if we bring it to the HDC, they do not provide this information. The HDC can also always recommend denial of the permit. You can request from the director, myself, to extend the timeline that's been afforded to the HDC for review to request that this information be provided or additional. I don't think I'd take them before the HDC unless they provided something, some level of archiving information to bring before the HDC and have the HDC review that and determine whether they feel it's adequate or additional information is needed. Or if it's a minor situation, you could always recommend approval of the permit. So I think like you said, Josh, it's case by case. We'll see. The first one that comes through, we'll continually build upon this and make it stronger as we go forward. Just as a caveat to that, we have had a request for a demolition of a single family house. And I have reached out to Chris. This is recommended by the HDC that the first step be that staff reach out to the chair of the Historic District Commission to ask that first question. Is this a demolition that falls under the criteria that the HDC should review? And with that, Chris had asked that that staff and the chair have an ability to go to the site and meet with the property owners first before making that decision. So we are starting to follow some aspects of what was discussed by the HDC.
So that is the update to our procedures for demo permits. And this particular property is not only in the historic district, it's on one of the 3 oldest streets in town. And it's frankly one of them that I've been worried about for some time. So the hard part is that there's very limited documentation on this house. And that doesn't make it less historical, it just makes it more difficult. So it's one of those things I want to take a look at it and see if there's a way I can just look at it and look at the bones of the place, if you know what I mean, and see if I can determine just from a viewpoint of whether or not it's historical. But I have a great fear that this is going to be another one of those highly historical houses, unfortunately poorly documented. That makes this documentation procedure actually all the more important to me, to be honest. It's not in this book, which provides a lot of documentation. No, it's not in the building of Westminster, but that doesn't, people who are in that book were there by choice. Some people could have fallen out and said, we won't let you in our house. We don't want to be in any stinking book. So just because it's not listed in that book doesn't mean it's not historical.
So Chris, you are referring to Week's book?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I didn't know that. I couldn't see the document you showed.
Yeah, the building of Westminster. There's also no state inventory form for it. And again, it could have been that, you know, they could have been in Florida for the winter and missed the surveyors when they came through. So, meaning to me, all the more reason we need to knuckle down on our procedures. How about the top part of these procedures? Do we have anything that we want to tweak on it? Got an A and a B.
Can you scroll down on the document? Or
Actually,
up,
it's
or
at the
down,
top.
down? Right, sorry, up or down. I never know which way.
You're right, scrolling down would work, but So we've got, this is just procedures. This is not speaking to what should be in the historic document. This is just, you know, when something comes in, immediately I get contacted and immediately we start talking about options for saving preservation, or saving historic fabric with tax credits, because sometimes people don't know those are available and they could make all the difference in calculating what should be happening to a historic structure. So we want to get that information to them very quickly so they can start running the numbers in their head and making a decision. And then secondly, trying to request an immediate walkthrough.
Madam Chair, it looks like that you have all your I's dotted and T's crossed with this. I don't, you know, immediate meeting, a walkthrough, and a call to the historic, Maryland Historic Trust. I don't know what else you could do right off the bat that would take care of everything. So,
Okay, well, if there's no other recommendations, this procedure stays within the Department of Planning as an interior policy. The update to require documentation for all structures for consideration for demo permits could be hosted on a page on our website so that potential applicants will always have an understanding of what we would require. But either way, I'd kind of like this document to be at least embraced with the understanding we can always change it later if it turns out to be something unwieldy.
I agree and continue to applaud the effort here. Do we need to vote on this? Do I need to motion to approve it as presented?
I think that's the next best step. What do you think, Mark?
I saw a nod.
I agree, yes.
All right, so let's look for a motion to accept these two procedures.
Yeah, and I'm happy to motion as such that we adopt these two procedures as presented.
Is there
I second that.
seconds? Do we have any further discussion we need? I'm always worried that, you know, things need to be tweaked and fixed, and maybe the English isn't perfect, but I think we need something, especially with the looming demo permit.
Don't let perfect be the enemy of the good.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So if there are no other questions, I'll go for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
I see my thumbs up. I
Aye.
see two. I see 3 thumbs up. Wahoo! Terrific. Okay, thank you. One piece of business down. Okay. Next, we have our topic of best practices, I believe. Let me go to the next screen. Right. So we have their new business best practices. And I have been digging around some, but I still haven't found my Jerry Truscott pretty good demolition of structures example that I think would be helpful. And I haven't found it yet, but I have found some other interesting things. I found a Westminster Historic District Commission workbook from 2011. And let's see, why can't I show it? It's because it's got flowers on it there. Shoot. Mark, if I drop this by the city, can it be copied and distributed?
Absolutely.
At some point?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
So what I really like about this, I hate to say I completely forgot we did this, but we have a whole section in there about Preserve America communities and neighborhoods. We have a section from 2010 on the community application for Preserve America grants, which not, at the time, we were going to try and be a certified local government, and I think we decided to step back from that. But it shows the kind of community grants we could have gotten had we been in the community CLA. What is that? CLRs. There's specific communities that are eligible for preservation dollars, but they need to have specific expertise on staff. And believe it or not, the biggest stumbling block was that we don't have an archaeologist on staff. We have enough historian people, but not any. I would have to do it as somehow be assigned or something, which I wouldn't mind. I've got some information from the Preservation Alliance, and we at one time did what was called a home preservation fair, where we invited vendors in to talk about various preservation projects and their expertise, whether it was doing siding or doing windows, paint, all kinds of different folks who had local expertise. And so this outlines that preservation fair that we did, and we did it in the Armory. And we even have the layout of who was there and what we did. We also have a whole thing in here about creating preservation of plaque program. And I know incentives was something that Aaron was going to work on for us for best practices. I'm not sure if he got the message or not. I didn't see anything from Aaron about plaques, but there is something in here about plaque programs and preservation awards for incentives. And so these are all things other communities have tried. Strategic historic preservation plans that might be good for our community. We can look at where we think the oldest part of town is, or where we think we might want to start recognition of some sort. The other thing I have from 2002 is a member's handbook for the Westminster Historic District Commissioners. And this was so long ago, I had my maiden name of Stevens. That's how long ago I was on. But again, in digging it up, it has a lot of great information. It's got our original ordinances. It's got our statement of authority, our policies, our procedures, our forms. It's just a historical document. I'm not sure it needs to be copied and sent around, but if we get back to meeting in person next month, I think it'd be worth people looking over, or I could share it with people. You know, Chris, I can drop it off to you at some point. A couple of good references to kind of dust off and think about. I also did find some information. Again, I know Aaron was doing incentives, but I didn't see any yet. So I did find one on plaque program. And so I sent those out to Mark. It was just a link. I was hoping Mark would send them off to the commissioners at some point. We don't have to discuss it tonight, but it's part of that big documentation effort of looking at what kind of incentives work in communities. So,
Yeah, oh, sorry, Chris.
I was going to say, it was time for our other commissioners to talk about what they've been working on this month.
Yeah, and I think reviewing the old documentation would certainly be interesting. For anyone that's on the call that's watching, you know, I'll just point out there's a lot of different documentation that was shared with the commissioners beyond the borough of Carlisle. And if folks haven't looked at it yet, I would encourage taking a close look at the Chesterton Historic District and Commission procedures. There's a lot of information in there about their demolition practices. And I think some of the simple language that they include may be worth us looking at and taking a look at. I did have a follow-up question around the city code that Mark shared with us over email. And I think it may be pertinent to this conversation. So I am going to go there if it's all right with everyone. Sure. And that is just, Mark, to follow up on my earlier question, looking at the city code that you shared with us, and paragraph E, it talks about the penalty for violating the demolition section is $1,000 for each offense and $1,000 per day if the violation continues to exist. And I guess my question is just simply, is your understanding still that, that is in effect and that's enforceable? And I don't know, just if you had any comment on that fine apparatus for those that fail to satisfy the demolition requirements.
Yes, it is in full effect and can be applied for anybody in violation of conditions of a permit. So yes.
That's city level, not county level.
This is city. This would be a city municipal infraction that they'd be in violation of, and the city would send the violation notice to the property owner.
Could you please excuse my ignorance, but has this happened much? Is it defensible?
I'm not aware of us ever using that penalty.
Not to pick on our previous case that has helped, kickstart some of these discussions, but it certainly seems like a situation that bordered on it if didn't qualify for that enforcement. And one of the things, and again, we can wait until later in the meeting if need be, but that site, I still have a lot of questions about and what it's currently happening. And I think that, again, any insight that you can give us on why we haven't used this in the past and what needs to happen to make sure that we stress it in the future. If we talk about what may be missing from Chair McMaster's earlier document, it may just simply be a reference back to this policy of, if you don't get the permit, if you don't satisfy the requirements, you may be eligible for paragraph E here of $1,000 fine initially, and then each additional day if you proceed. So just a reminder, I think people don't even know about this language in here. And I think it might be good for us to think about how we can refer back to it in the future.
How does that hit you, Mark, as staff?
I'm fine with it. I don't think it's a bad idea that you place some statement in initially when we meet with people as to as we're guiding them through this process that they fail to meet the conditions of the demolition permit that's subject to this fine. Yeah, I have no objection. In fact, I encourage that. I think the more we can tell people and inform them, the better. Now, as to, I can't speak to us using it in the past. We did look at this with the most recent case, but you do have to go through the language as written, and it does say fails to abide by the conditions of a permit shall be. So when he was actually issued the demolition permit, he did abide by the conditions of the demolition permit at that point.
Mhm.
So you're correct, Josh, that there may be some failure in the language. But we did look at this section as well as other municipal infractions under the zoning ordinance. And I think we touched on that maybe a little bit some time ago. Unfortunately, it just did not fit in what we could have done.
So there's really two parts of what I understand Josh's question, and one is, can we insert the language of the ordinance into our just approved procedures? And Mark, could you craft language that would be put at the bottom of those procedures that would remind an applicant that there are penalties for not having a permit?
Absolutely. I'll work on the document you had and also put it on some type of Historic District Commission letterhead. So it's more formal, and I think referencing the section as well and providing an online link to it and any other potential links we can provide in that information packet would be good.
So that's that is a preemptive warning that there's something bad that could happen if you don't follow these procedures. We can put that on our website, and I think that's important.
Yes.
And we probably should make a motion to that effect. Josh, you want to make a motion that we add that language to our updated demolition permit procedures?
Yes, I definitely recommend that. Again, we're not proposing new language. We're just proposing that we ensure that there's a reference back to existing code in those new procedures about the penalties for failing to comply with demolition permitting. And so, as
And we
discussed,
request that Mark draft the language so we get it all right.
Yep.
Do we have a second?
Second,
Second. So I think that would be great to kind of close the loop on what we put on the website. I think that's great. Any thoughts, Chris?
I mean, I think you've covered everything, and that was a big catch right there, so no,
So all in favor of asking Mark to draft that language for us
aye.
with the motion that we just got? Good. Chris, you too?
yeah, I said, I did.
All right. So that's
So-
part of what Josh's concern was.
Yeah,
Now
and
that
if I
we-
can loop back to the Chesterton example, then again, there's a couple of different pieces in there about demolition that I encourage all of us to look at and consider, maybe for future. But one thing that I really like that they have, for example, on page 21 of the Chesterton part, they have a whole paragraph about demolition by neglect. And
I saw
what
that.
happens if someone is just simply letting a roof cave in, and again, they would then under their language, they could get that $1,000 a day fine if they if they don't take care of it. And I recognize that would be a big expansion. So again, I think this merits further conversation, but I just wanted to point out that there are examples from other cities here on how to enforce both the timelines, demolition by neglect, and again, I think their example is a really nice, clean one to look at what needs to come before the commission and be discussed. So all of which is just to say, again, encourage all of us to take a look at some of these examples.
So I'm going to piggyback on that, Josh. I took a really good look at Frederick's, because I think Frederick's like the gold standard for what they do. And chapter 11, I mean, their handbook is over 120 pages with illustrations and clear language. And they also have chapter 11 on demolition, and it's the same. It sounds similar to Chestertown, which on page 116 is demolition by neglect. So basically the city's code enforcement department is the one that documents, if I understood it correctly, documents a property, and then you just don't get to demolish a building just because you let it deteriorate. Then it still has to be reviewed, and is it historic property and all these other criteria. In fact, I have to give a shout out to the borough of Carlisle, which is my hometown. I lived in the historic district, and I also worked and volunteered at the County Historical Society, which sort of supported the Historic District Commission with research. And there was a case where a property owner, this is years ago, but there was a case where there was a property owner in the historic district wanted to demolish a building and just put up a new building. And he could only be forced to make improvements where there were like safety issues. But the point is, he didn't win. It fell into ruins, and at a certain point where it became a safety hazard, then he was forced to do repairs, but then you have to use the guidance, the Historic District Commission guidance. So he still had to do it. So there are lots of towns, boroughs, and cities out there that have teeth like that. So yeah.
Well, this is really worthy of further thinking. This is a whole new wrinkle on demolition by neglect. I think we need to, talk a little bit with the mayor and the common council about this. I think this could be something we could do incrementally, or maybe, a grandfather sort of thing. This is different, I think, than our existing ordinance intention, but I think, at some point, maybe we want to do this. We'll have to think.
I mean, I agree. I think, if I could jump in, I mean, demolition is one aspect. Hopefully, maybe if we're looking at all of these other, municipalities to see what they do and how they handle things, maybe, things don't have to deteriorate. We're always having to look at demolition. Hopefully that's like the last resort. So maybe we can, design, more guidance and ordinances for, to help people keep their property in repair, then we don't have to go down that road all the time. But it's good to have that as a last resort.
Well, it's good to see how that's parlayed. What really makes me smile, Josh, is I happen to know John Seidel, who wrote this, was a co-author on this Chestertown thing. So I didn't know he's actually an archaeologist. I didn't know he was involved with this stuff. So that's great. And it's good to also to look over the Carroll County stuff. I had no idea Carroll County had such an in-depth historic preservation group. They really are highly detailed with their architectural advice. I'm kind of stunned. I didn't know it was out there. I mean, I might have just said at one point, let's just go with their regs. Just refer to the county, because they look pretty good, but I have to look them over a little closer.
Yeah, I was on the commission for the Carroll County for like 20 years. They are in charge of Uniontown. So that was why there are so many regulations.
All right, well, before we get too far down the path, I wanted to get back to the other half of Josh's question about, okay, so they've got a permit. How do we enforce they stick to that permit? And that's a question for Mark.
That would fall on me. Well, it's a combination. The problem, one of the disconnects that we have, or things we can improve on, is working with Carroll County. Obviously, the demolition permits go through Carroll County, and Carroll County has a staffing, and they're the ones to have an individual that works with the property owner and goes out and checks the site. So typically it's working directly, and that's what happened in this case. They did inform us that he was doing work without the permit. We were in close contact with him. That's how we got the tarp over top the building, coordinating with Carroll County. They were able to talk to the property owner, and anything else that you saw happen as that was discussed by HDC, it was through that coordination with the county. So that's one of the oddities, is that they're the ones who enforce the building code for the city when it comes to demolition permit. But I think the communication we had in this case did go very well. And apparently in discussions with them, it appeared that they were out there almost every day, just ensuring that he was not continuing any more demolition and making sure we had areas were safe and debris was pushed back onto the site.
Mm-hmm. So from my perspective, I thought so far what I see is what I expected for the past. I'm not sure anything more needs to be said unless, Josh, you have other questions.
Yeah, I guess my only remaining question mark is, once that it's approved, is there a timeline on there? Is it managed? Like, I drove by 30 minutes before this meeting, and I'm a little surprised, to put it honestly, that something that we approved so long ago is still a pile of bricks and pieces of metal sticking out and no caution tape around it and all that. And again, I totally understand. I'm not trying to put more work on anyone, but there's a little bit of community pride in my heart, at least at the very least. Like, we had to make a very difficult decision. And now there's a pile of bricks on Main Street. And I'm curious when it's going to be cleaned up and where things are at. And, you know, it's been months now. And I don't think that's an optimal situation for anybody on Main Street. So wondering if you could speak a little bit to, once it's approved, what happens with monitoring and making sure that the work gets done in a timely manner, in a safe manner, is cleaned up appropriately, so forth and so on.
So I have reached out to Jordan Knox requesting an update. I just haven't gotten a clear understanding. I will share that once I get it. My understanding is they have done demo to the extent to the building that they can do without damaging the log cabin, the log cabin portion of it. So you can probably see that a lot better now than you could obviously in the past. Because the concept is any new development, they would have to encapsulate that or provide or use that in somehow in the interior design. Dean Cameron had mentioned. So I have reached out. I just haven't heard back. We still have not received a site development plan for this. So I can certainly reach out to Carroll County and see if they can coordinate with them if they can remove some of that debris from the site. I'd be more than happy to do that.
So they
Yeah,
have
I think that would be a good use. You know, for the record, I am not trying to be the neighborhood busybody that goes around examining everybody's houses all the time. But when there is a pile of brick and metal on Main Street for weeks, and not just weeks, but months, that seems, you know, highly relevant to what we are discussing. And certainly, yeah, it's just really relevant to this whole demolition process, because if we ever have to be in the regrettable situation again where we have to approve a demolition, I think it's good for this group to know what to expect from that. So again, no criticism here, meant just raising my voice as a citizen and as a member of this commission to say, if we approve a project, I want to, you know, what do we need to do to help make sure that it continues to be processed in a good way.
Absolutely. And I'm fine with this. And we talked a little bit about this before, being a little bit more proactive, and you guys are out there a lot. Chair McMasters is aware of this. We just had a person doing a tax credit improvement, and there was some concern with that. She brought it to our attention. We went out and met with them. So I have no problem with that. You guys are the face of HDC. You're downtown. You're seeing these things. If things like this come up, please let us know. It helps us get on it sooner, and we can coordinate with the property owner faster.
Yeah, that was unfortunate, wasn't it? Walking by one of our tax credit projects, and we had made an insistence on hand raking out, and there on the sidewalk was a saw cutting through the brick mortar, and I took a picture of it. And honestly, I was pretty upset, thinking I know that particular project had to go back for a second set of estimates, and it cost the landowner another $4,000 just to adhere to our requests, only to find they were ignored on site. So we don't have a good monitoring situation for our tax credit projects. And I don't know if we ever will, but I learned something then, to just turn it over to Mark and let him deal with it.
Well,
Take a picture.
and again, I thought that was great, and I thanked Chair McMasters for it. Again, that is certainly a help. As you can imagine, we're short-staffed as it is, and any help we're happy with. And the property owner in this case was equally upset, and they rectified the situation, so it's going much smoother.
That's good.
Mark, I have a quick question. Since the Jordan Knox, is it 288 East Main? Is that Jordan Knox property?
Yes.
88. Since he had to reconfigure the facade, like I think he was going to put a balcony or whatever he's going to do, and now he's going to keep the log cabin structure portion. Do you have a new image or drawing schematic of what the facade, the front facade is going to look like?
No, again, when they submit the site for the multifamily development, they want to do the 4-unit development, that requires a site development plan application. So when they submit that, architectural elevations are part of that process. So they haven't provided us anything and they haven't submitted that application yet, but certainly when we do get that, we're going to require they meet the requirements of the historic district guidelines for architectural design. And I have no concern, and I would certainly recommend that it come to the HDC for review prior to the planning commission to provide recommendation.
So that department can enforce the historic district guidelines, but the historic district commission can't enforce its own guidelines. Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying? The guidance that's on it.
Essentially, unfortunately, yes, they are guidelines. The planning commission has more of the weight because they are the ones who actually review and approve the site plan. But and knowing the planning commission and how we operate, they certainly would look forward to recommendation from the historic district commission. And staff provide, and we work at the very beginning trying to get the better design that we can get before we even get to that point.
Well, I think one of the points of this meeting was when we were all looking at other municipalities that have historic district commissions that seem to work well, to see what we can do, to tighten up, go beyond just, suggestions and hope people, take them. Again, I looked hard at Frederick, and I reached out to a contact who unfortunately I didn't get a chance to talk to because she has COVID. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to talk to her this week and talk to her directly about, what Frederick does. And again, I know Frederick's bigger and they have more money, but that doesn't mean that some of their ideas can't be applied. What works. And I think some of their things could be, ideas could be worth consideration to just, teeth and tightening things up, which would help your department also.
So I will also throw in one other little thing, especially with the past project at 288. The demo's not exactly done yet. The front facade of brick is also going to come down, and the one side. Why they didn't take that all down to the log on all 3 sides, I don't understand. Maybe they just didn't have anywhere else to pile it up, but there still will be, expect a little more demo in order to meet the design that I understand will be forthcoming.
I go by that property every day, twice a day, and the brick's just all over the place. So and I was also thinking about safety issues also, or hauling the brick away or whatever it is they're going to do with it. And part of that log structure is exposed and it's just been sitting there for at least a month or more. So maybe they don't have new design plans yet. I don't know.
It seems to me there's other organizations who'd be worrying about that public safety side of it all more.
And again, that's really goes through Carroll County permitting process for that review. But again, I will reach out to them and reach out to the property owner as well, at least to put the thought in his mind that he should be out on site trying to clean up some of the debris.
Normally, I'm a person who prefers to stay in my lane, as long as they stick to what we told them to. I don't want to stick my nose into it. However, we were on the front page of the newspaper twice in a month over that property. And I do worry that people will be educated to think that we're the cause of this problem. And we certainly don't want our public to believe that we're the cause of other issues on that property. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, Josh, did that answer your second part of your question?
Yes, thank you. I will, just for the record, I took a couple snapshots today, and I will send that out via email, including our public record email. as well.
Right, right. So we have Chestertown, Frederick, Uniontown. Any other documentation we need to pay attention to from the idea of strengthening up our best practices?
I just wanted to say, I tried to put it in the document, but it is a Google slide from Chestertown on their website, which is included in one of the emails I believe that Josh sent out to everybody. The Historic Chestertown, the Historic District Commission, on their actual site, and I don't know if I get out of this if I try and pull up the site like I was trying to do, if I would screw anything up. So I was trying not to do that, but they do have a whole bunch of, I believe it's 19 or 20 different slides that when you go there, it talks about the procedure, their procedures. It talks about what they should and shouldn't, what they are and aren't allowed to do based off of ordinances. Talks about their contributing and non-contributing structures. So like when you go to their website, it's a scrolling show of everything. So it's really, really interesting. And I thought that'd be perhaps a really cool thing to have as an addition to your website.
Now, I know that everybody's probably taking a huge deep breath saying, who the hell's going to do all this? And how do we come up with really cool pictures like Chestertown? And there are grants out there for this kind of historic preservation. I can think of at least 3 grant opportunities. And Andrea, I know you know of one of them. I'm sure that we could probably get a mini grant for some of this from the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area for 50% of this. This is definitely right up their alley of doing preservation. I think that the state used to have preservation grants to communities, and this would be something that they used to cover 100%, whether they still have that money or not. I haven't looked in a few years, but this is that kind of money. And believe it or not, Corbett's charges the battle. We could ask the American Battlefield Protection Program, especially if we were to put a twist on this to make sure that Main Street and Green Street are well protected because of the battle that happened there in 1863. And that's 100% grant, and preservation is their middle name. They love doing preservation projects. So it's possible, if we want to go fancy dancy, we can find some grant money to hire a preservation planner to help us.
So what we have now, I think just a lot of it just needs to be updated. I think what was done well, but it really is old. That said, sometimes there's no reason to reinvent the wheel, and a lot of places, like I don't see why we couldn't at least reach out to other historic districts that we like and say, we really like your guidance or your guidance or your best practices or your ordinances or whatever. Maybe we can copy, and could we just use that? And as long as you give them credit and they agree to that, and we can edit, their document if we like what they have, because I think a lot of these different districts and municipalities, we're pointing out ideas that we like. And, again, as long as credit is given where it's due and you get permission, that's a possibility also. Or say, this section is taken from, Frederick Historic District Commission, guidebook or something, or Sykesville or wherever. It's a possibility. But so maybe cobbling all that together, we could do that. But I definitely think that it needs to be updated. And the one thing I did like about Frederick, again, is in addition to the guidebook, which is 120 or 30 pages, with here's what we mean by this, and here's what we want, like we'd like you to do, and here's what we don't want you to do. And they also have brochures, one directed to the residents, one directed to the downtown, business merchants, and then one directed to contractors. And it's like a quick and dirty brochure. It's like, this is directed for you, and here's where to go to get additional information. But they're all of them are it's a little bit of, it's directed directly to that audience. And I think one of the things that we could do, to your point, Chair McMasters, is educate the public a little better and have some updated information on, especially on the website, and maybe even send out packets of information to the downtown merchants, like start downtown business district.
So Chris, you were going right down my path, because education was supposed to be Kevin's job for this month and next. And I was going to put him on the hot seat next if we thought we had hit all the major communities that have great historic districts that we would like to investigate. Are you and Josh confident that we have plenty to look at, or do we need to look at any other communities?
I think we have a lot of information. It's more like pick and choose what is good, because I think we spin tires a lot. I would rather us complete something and then make it more relevant to us. And I think the public, education wise, needs to not look at tons of things, but maybe us narrowing what we think fits in our area more. And everybody, I think, is amiable. If someone points out something we missed or didn't go into enough depth, that we can revisit that.
Okay, I think I want to know from Josh and Chris, who were tasked with looking at community guidelines, if they feel like they've hit all the communities they want to, or do they think we need to hit a couple more in the next month?
I think we have hundreds of pages here of reference from many, many different communities throughout Maryland and Pennsylvania. So my personal read is that we have plenty of material to work with, and to draw some proposals together from.
And what I did is, like, I thought of towns like, what's the downtown that I really like? What's the downtown that looks good? So if it looks good and it's maintained, what are they doing? So what are they doing that they can maintain or be consistent with? So, and I mean, we just, we just threw several towns, cities out there. I mean, I don't know how many more you need, because they've been consistent over a long time, years or decades. So they're doing something right. And it's more than just, the suggestion. So
Chris and Josh, would it benefit us in the next month if you contacted some of these communities and just asked them what worked best, what they like best about what they have, so that they can tell us what they think works best?
Yeah, I mean, I started that process, but again, my contact was sick. So I'm hoping this, and then I'm going to reach out to Sykesville also. And just to say, or what do they do? What works, what kind of ordinances, so I think that's a really good next step.
I would like to
here's
see
what's on paper and here's what we actually do.
Yeah, I would like to see the next month just be a personal contact of knowing what people think works the best for their community. How is it they've ended up with a success story?
And why?
I mean, clearly we admire them.
And then maybe after that, maybe set up a meeting with our city commissioners to make suggestions, or.
I'm still looking for education to have a plan and for incentives to have a plan. And I'm looking at June as being the end of our data gathering period. And then I think June, maybe we need a workshop among ourselves to pull what we like the best before we bring it to the council, or ask them for a workshop sort of day, or before we bring it to the mayor.
And present a plan.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I can weigh in.
Sure.
I think that there's, some value in reaching out and asking what's working well, but what I would say is of equal or greater importance is for all the members of this commission to just be reading through these things, to skim it. And if you see something you like, highlight it. And let's just do a copy and paste almost of recommendations that we want. What do we want to advocate for with council and mayor? Because I would love to invite the council and the mayor to come to a meeting in July, or whenever you think is appropriate, and to say, here's 10 suggestions we've made after looking through the materials, following up to hear about how the implementation went in their hometown, etc. So I think it really should be both at the same time. That yes, Christine and I can be reaching out, but I would also invite you and Kevin and Aaron and Mark and Andrea to look through this and see what else we would like to add to our dream list.
I think that's great. I think we should plan on a dig-in workshop in June. I think, Mark, maybe, I don't know how everybody else's schedules is because I'm retired. I'm pretty flexible, but maybe a afternoon type of situation, or, a early evening that we know is going to go on miserably long, whatever works.
I'm flexible in June.
I like the idea of a morning or a day. The only thing we have scheduled for next month would be a tax credit application. I'm all for having a separate work session with the Historic District Commission during the day. We can certainly open to the public if they want to come, but I agree. I think getting together and rolling up their sleeves and getting to it is the way to go. And if you don't mind, if you're reaching out to these jurisdictions, and this is great because I can ask other people to do stuff. As mentioned, maybe it is asked not only what works best, but what education programs they have set up, which works, what fails, what partners are they invested in downtown that also get engaged with the Historic District Commission. So other things too, if you're going to reach out to these people, maybe it's expanding some of the questions and I always like the question, what didn't work? That's always helpful too, because you may like something, but other jurisdictions say, yeah, we like that too, but a lot of them don't like to explain that portion of it, but I think that's always an important question.
Well, that's great, Mark. And then the education part, Kevin, we asked you to come up with a plan for educating our public. Is there a chance you can work on that this month?
Sure. And also, I like what Josh said, to have a workshop. I think I like Zoom, and it is easy, but a lot is if we can meet in person, I think we can grasp a lot by body language, not always verbally.
Yeah, and Kevin, what I really want is I want a leg of education now, not after we get the plan. There's lots of stuff we've done in the past where we've done the contractors workshop in the past, where we've done real estate credits, where we have lectures, where we've done talks to the public in general. I think we need to look at education independent of whatever we may come up with best practices, because we have a depth of education. And I would like to see an education plan that could go ahead with or without any new practices. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
And I would love to have that as a leg of information to present to our council, as much as I'd like also, and I don't know how to, I guess I'd have to get a hold of Aaron about incentives, because he was supposed to be working on things like plaque program, tax incentives, that kind of thing. And maybe he didn't understand his task for this month, or he hasn't got to it yet.
I think the more partners, the better. Like Frederick, in their guidebook, their handbook, they say, it's the Historic District Commission, it's the mayor, it's the council, it's the downtown merchants, it's the such and the, and they have all these partners. And I remember when I bought my first house in Carlisle in the Historic District, when we're looking at it, the realtor said, this is in the Historic District and you have to abide by these rules, and handed us this like a cheat sheet and said, be aware that if you buy this, here's what you can and can't do, at least to the facade. And you knew that before you bought the house. So,
Yeah.
Working with realtors. I think would be
That
great.
to me is really important education. But when I talk about incentives, I think, we have three paths here we could be going along, right?
Right.
More pointed guidance that becomes more than guidance, an education plan that we can do with or without revised guidance, and an incentives that we can do with or without guidance. And I think that's why I tasked people to work on it for the next 2 months, because often incentives are easier to implement than more stringent or more pointed guidance. And so we can work on different paths to get us to the same place we want to go without one being reliant on the other. Does that make sense?
Carrots, not sticks.
A little bit, we just have to get to a place where we know where we want to be, but there are lots of carrots out there in the world we haven't even tried. So, who knows, maybe that might be helpful.
Right, I agree. Anywhere you can do education and
I really think we're not going to be successful with just one of these lines of thought. I think we're going to have to work all three of them in order to move our public. That's my opinion. So right now for action, we have a need for an education plan of some sort, Kevin. I can contact Aaron specifically, or Mark, do you need to do that? For an incentive plan?
I think if you coordinate directly with him, that's fine. Just two members. I'd prefer a phone call if you could.
Sure.
Again, I really stress not using your email. So email each other, because you open yourself up to open meetings and FOIA requests, where if somebody puts in a FOIA request with your email, they can ask for your entire email string of anything. It really does. That's why I really stress, when you want to do, just send it to us and we'll send it out to the group. That way the public is seen, and any FOIA request would be the public entity and the email from staff. So, but a phone call, two individuals talking, perfect.
I do have to say, when I talked with the mayor about the plaque program, she seemed really jazzed. She actually stopped the conversation and sat down and put a note in her phone about it. And to me, that's an incentive that, again, can be pushed forward without having, other things tied to it. If we can get some things accomplished, I think it's important to step forward. Okay, so can we schedule for June? Does everybody have their calendar? So we'll be meeting the 1st of June anyway for a tax credit, or do you suggest, Mark, we put it together with a tax credit and then working on a plan to present to council? Or
I think it doesn't hurt to follow the meeting schedule, have the tax credit, and I think it still would be worthwhile to have follow-up discussion that we're having tonight leading to the actual work session, just to see if anybody needs help with the wrap, get prepared for that.
So then the work session would be separate, and during the day, does anyone have any particular times they prefer?
My calendar for June during the day is pretty free, except for there's 3 days that I'll be away. But other than that, I would be available during the day most of the days in June, as long as I have advance notice.
Josh, what's your life like?
Not as flexible, I'm afraid. I could do Friday the 3rd or Friday the 10th. Beyond that, I will need to look at weekend times or evenings.
I could do the 10th. And I can do the 3rd.
I can do the 3rd or 10th.
I have training, CCR training, and I don't even know what that is, but I'm scheduled on the 10th for training. Let me look and see on the 3rd what life looks like. Again, CCR training. What the hell is CCR? I think it's some training class or something. Josh, you don't think the 17th is possible? Or you just don't know?
The 17th, I don't know. I
Well-
could potentially be available the afternoon of Monday, the 13th.
Well, that day's free for me. How about you guys?
I will be away on the 13th.
Ah.
13th, 14th, and 15th, I'll be away.
Kevin, I'm assuming you're retired like me. You just put
Yeah.
stuff in your calendar and you can't remember why you signed up for it.
The only thing is I volunteer Fridays 10 to 1. So after 1:15, I'm available.
What about Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? Okay.
When
I'm not available during the day, but if we wanted to do a series of evening connections, like I could make something like that work.
Chris, could you, Chair McMasters, could, are one of those days on the, since we can all meet on both of those Fridays, is that something that maybe you could move one of those?
Why don't we book the 10th? Because I can't even remember what CCR training is. And I guess I'll find out what I signed up for and maybe I'll be able to get out of it.
Could- Chris, would it be possible for us to book the 3rd instead of the 10th?
Sure, I got that training that same day. Clearly I paid for something. I'm not sure. I know
Oh, no,
what it
I'm sorry. I misread my calendar. The 10th is better.
The
The
10th is-
3rd, I'll be gone in the afternoon, so I could only do the morning. So, but the 10th is completely free.
All right. Well, let's do the 10th. I'll remember whatever it is I promised somebody else I'd do. So
a
And-
10th,
10th, and should we do mornings or afternoons?
Whole day, morning, start in the morning, and if we need to,
Okay.
The only
Alright.
caveat I will say is we really should probably hear from our missing commissioner of Aaron, who
Yeah.
may have a preference with his children's schedules, and he may not even be available on that Friday. But if he is, be great to integrate.
Yeah.
can we
definitely.
do this anyhow, even if he can't attend? I mean, because we do need to get rolling on it.
I agree. You know, maybe he could submit his recommendations asynchronously for us to talk about that day.
Or maybe he could zoom in or come for part of it or something like that, if that's possible. But I think since 4 of us can meet, I think we should meet.
And I love the asynchronous word. I haven't thought about that in a long time. So very good. That's a gold star for the night. All right, good. Well, let's book it. Can we do that, Mark?
I'm just seeing what time were you thinking on the 10th?
9 is as early as you're getting me.
Yeah, no earlier than 9.
For most people, it's
Okay.
10. 9, I'm gonna come in grumpy. I can tell you that right now, but I will be there at 9. We'll just be grumpy. It'll take me an hour to get it, that smile.
Not a problem.
What about 10 to noon?
I don't think that'll be enough time.
10 to,
10 to 2?
now, keep in mind, now, again, I'm short-staffed, so I can't commit too much time.
Do you have to
But-
be there, Mark? Can't you just give us the
No,
space?
no, what we could do is, if I put you in the main conference room, I can certainly also have YouTube going or have a Zoom meeting set up that we can actually film it as well. So we have that documented. But no, I don't necessarily need to be there. I think what we could do is Andrea and I can kind of play off each other as to being there when we can, but I just can't commit too much time. to the
I
Madam
don't
Clerk.
think you should actually. I think you should just let us work and let us do what we can do and round us up at the end and turn off the machine.
I'm good with that. I will book it.
Book it. Book it 9 to 3. And if we're not done by then, we'll just have killed each other and you'll have to call 911. So simple as that.
Now, I will, with a caveat that I will need to talk to Sarah Emhouse about this to make sure she's okay and not, and that room is available. But so I'll do that tomorrow, and if everything's fine, I will send out a meeting invitation.
I'm thinking from 9 to 12, we'll be working on best practices, and from like maybe 1 to 2, we'll work on the education plan, and from 2 to 3, we'll work on incentives. So we'll have a package at the end to present to City Council as to, you know, if they have input, and then give them a month to think about it, and then maybe in the fall have things to move forward on.
Okay. And I did put a request in for the room right now from 9 to 3. So I'll let you know, but I'll let you know tomorrow. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Okay, and I'll continue working on pulling up some of our old stuff. Going through our archives in my house.
So is there a plan B, a different room if that room's not available, Mark?
Yeah, there's other rooms in the
Okay.
building. That's the only one that has the technology that if Aaron can't make it but can do Zoom, we can put him up in the big TV. I think everybody's been there before, so it just allows better flexibility, the space.
Chris, the documents you find, also think would be good for the commissioner if Mark could copy them all, and we then have a binder for everything like that as a reference for ourselves, I think would be good going forward.
I think so too. I'm just dying to find Jerry Truscott's demolition permit request for Grace Lutheran Church. I am tempted to call them in Tennessee and ask if they've got it because that's the gold standard in my head, and I haven't found it yet. So we'll keep working.
But absolutely, Kevin. And anything that Chair McMasters gets to us, we can copy, and anything that we have, that's not a bad idea at all. I think that's probably something we should have anyway for any new members as well, that we have some starting book or binder that provides all this information.
Yeah.
I'm sure Chris would have liked that we had something a little bit better to give. But yes, absolutely.
Well, we used to work on kind of the weight of people just always being there. And I am sort of feeling like I've got that weight on me as just the only person who's just been there for 20 years. So we need to do a better job of onboarding. Okay, so back to our agenda. Have we fulfilled what we wanted to under best practices?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, so let's do some commissioner reports. And I do want to just start with one thing. I ran into an old commissioner that we used to have here. Her name is Grace Kelly at the Flower and Jazz Festival. And, I know sometimes we have troubles getting a quorum, and I'm wondering if it wouldn't be worth it to expand us one more seat and get someone in so that if we have conflicts, we can still pretty much assure that we have a quorum.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Definitely always positive to have an alternative person, and they could regularly join the meeting, they only wouldn't have a vote unless we would have a quorum. Then they could join in and be updated on what is happening.
Well, we have 7 slots, if I understand correctly. So we're just filling an unfilled spot. It's not like we're expanding the commission in any way. And I think that having someone fly in and fly out is awkward, but just inviting another commissioner to fill a seat would be, I think, a little better than she would be here for every meeting and have full participation. She lives in the historic district and she served with us before. Did you serve with her, Kevin? Grace Kelly?
No, but I know Grace.
Yeah. Well, I asked her just if she would still be interested because she moved and lots of things in her life changed. And she said, yeah, she'd be interested. So I'll write the mayor and ask her if we can if that would be something she would consider.
That would be great. Then we can parcel out more work.
Yeah, she certainly has a historical perspective because she was with us for a number of years, and she remembers when we used to do all kinds of stuff. So thought I'd run that by you guys and see if you thought that was a good idea.
I didn't realize there were 7 slots that needed to be, I didn't.
7 slots. We've only ever had 5 recently, but yeah, 7 slots. And that'll help us with our quorum issues. All right, as far as anything else I can present to you, pretty all's quiet on the Western Front. I haven't really got anything outside of that to present. Kevin, do you have anything to present?
No, I don't, but I really enjoyed us meeting the public on Saturday. I thought that was great. And I think if we used to do when I was on the Carroll County Historic District, we met at the county offices, but we met one time in the summer in Uniontown. So again, I think we should always, as we do always, invite the public. I hope the public would come out more, because it always is a good dialogue.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. How about you, Josh?
Nothing this evening. Thank you.
Chris, do you have anything to report?
No, nothing.
And how about our staff? Do we have any staff reports?
No, again, Chair McMasters, we talked about this briefly before the meeting started. It is time for elections. It's my understanding that Chair McMasters, obviously the chair, I was looking at the roster for 2021. It did not list a vice chair. I actually thought we did have a vice chair. Maybe I'm just incorrect about that.
I think we do. It's on our website that Aaron's our vice chair.
Oh, Aaron, okay, Aaron is.
Yeah, we
okay,
voted on that.
So my roster wasn't updated, so that's good. But it is that time for elections. I think what we decided is to take that up for discussion and vote next meeting versus today. So it gives everybody some time to, get themselves out there and they want to be chair or vice chair. But so we'll put that on the agenda for next meeting, as well as the tax credit application. And that's all I have.
Sounds great. Anything from Andrea?
I don't have anything. Thank you.
Sure. And do we know of any public comments or concerns that have come in?
I've received none.
So unless there's something else for the good of the cause, I would suggest we adjourn. Yeah. All right, great. I want to thank you all for all the hard work. I'm very, very impressed by everything that people put together, and we just have one more month to do data gathering, and then after that, it's crunching. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, have a good night.